The massive stone arena pulsed with bioluminescent light, casting eerie shadows across the ancient structure. Thousands of alien spectators filled the tiered seating, their murmurs creating a symphony of foreign sounds that echoed throughout the Colosseum. Above them, three suns blazed in the sky of Cythera, bathing everything in a harsh, unforgiving light that seemed to set the very air ablaze. In the center of the arena stood Brody Keller, Earth's diplomatic representative, his wrists bound by heavy chains anchored to the unforgiving ground. Despite his predicament, he maintained perfect posture, his face betraying no fear as he stared directly at the royal box where Queen Neela, known throughout the galaxy as the Silver Death, observed him with cold, calculating eyes. Her silver armor gleamed under the light of the three suns, intricate engravings depicting her 100 victories in combat adorning its surface. The crowd fell silent as she rose from her obsidian throne, her tall, lithe figure commanding absolute attention. Two additional suns were just beginning their ascent on the horizon, promising a rare 5-sun day, a day considered sacred for executions on Cythera. Witness the judgment of Queen Neela, sovereign of Cythera, conqueror of the three realms, bearer of the silver blade, announced a herald, his voice amplified throughout the arena. The human diplomat stands accused of conspiracy against the crown, an offense punishable by death. Brody remained still, his eyes never leaving the queen. He had been on Cythera for only 3 weeks, sent as part of humanity's diplomatic mission to establish relations with this powerful civilization. Somewhere in those 3 weeks, he had apparently committed a capital offense, or more likely, had been framed for one. Queen Neela descended from her royal box, each step deliberate and graceful. Her personal guard, led by Captain Zara, a fearsome warrior with skin the color of burnished copper and eyes that seemed to pierce through souls, flanked her closely. The Queen's silver blade, a legendary weapon said to have tasted the blood of 100 challengers without a single defeat, hung at her side. As she approached Brody, the crowd's anticipation grew palpable. The bioluminescent lights embedded in the stone walls pulsed faster, reflecting the collective excitement of the spectators. They had witnessed this scene 100 times before. The Queen would offer the condemned one chance to beg for mercy, before swiftly executing them when they inevitably did. Human. Queen Neela's voice cut through the silence, her accent giving the word a musical quality, despite the deadly intent behind it. You stand before me, accused of plotting against my reign. The evidence is substantial, the punishment absolute. As is tradition, I offer you one opportunity to speak before your sentence is carried out. The crowd leaned forward. This was the moment they had come to see, the pleading, the begging, the breaking of spirit that always preceded the flash of the silver blade. But Brody did not beg. Instead, he cocked his head slightly to one side, his eyes scanning the Queen's stance with professional interest. Your combat posture reveals tension in your left shoulder, he observed calmly. Your dominant hand. I'd guess an old injury, possibly from your 47th duel. The one against the Meridian assassin. You compensate well, but against a trained eye, it's a notable vulnerability. A collective gasp rippled through the arena. No one had ever responded to the Queen this way. The bioluminescent lights flashed crimson, reflecting the shock and outrage of the crowd. Queen Neela's eyes narrowed dangerously. You speak of vulnerability when you stand in chains before me? Perhaps humans are more foolish than I was led to believe. Brody shrugged, the chains clinking with his movement. Or perhaps I see no point in begging when your mind is already made up. I simply thought you might appreciate a professional observation. One warrior to another. Even legends have weaknesses. Acknowledging them is the first step toward true invincibility. Something flickered in the Queen's eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or surprise. For 100 executions, she had heard pleas for mercy, protests of innocence, curses upon her name. Never had she received tactical advice about her fighting stance. Captain Zara stepped forward, her hand on her weapon. "My queen, allow me to silence this disrespectful creature." Queen Neela raised a hand, stopping her captain. "No, this human intrigues me." She circled Brody slowly, her silver armor catching the light of the three suns. 100 have stood where you stand, human. 100 have faced my blade. None have shown such unusual composure. "I'm flattered to be the exception," Brody replied, his voice remaining steady. The queen stopped directly in front of him, close enough that he could see the fine details of her armor, the subtle differences in her pupil structure from human eyes, the almost imperceptible scar that ran along her jawline. "You are not afraid to die?" "Everyone dies eventually," Brody said. "The real question is whether one's death has meaning. Will my execution serve any purpose beyond spectacle? Will it strengthen your reign, improve relations with Earth, or simply satisfy tradition?" Queen Neela's expression remained unreadable, but the bioluminescent lights around the arena pulsed with a new rhythm, shifting from crimson to a deep purple. The crowd murmured in confusion. This was not how executions were supposed to proceed. After what seemed like an eternity, the queen spoke again, her voice carrying throughout the arena. "For the first time in my reign, I shall delay judgment. Take the human to the holding cells. I wish to interrogate him further before his sentence is carried out." The announcement sent ripples of shock through the crowd. Never had the queen postponed an execution. Captain Zara's expression betrayed her surprise, though she quickly masked it as she motioned for guards to escort Brody away. As Brody was led from the arena, chains still binding his wrists, he caught a final glimpse of Queen Neela watching him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. Their game had only just begun. The holding cell was carved directly into the living stone of Kathira's ancient bedrock, illuminated by the same bioluminescent organisms that lit the arena. Unlike Earth prisons, there were no bars or force fields, just solid rock with a single door made of a material Brody couldn't identify, likely some alien alloy beyond Earth's technological understanding. Hours passed before the door finally opened, revealing Queen Neela herself, now without her ceremonial armor, but still imposing in a fitted garment that resembled a military uniform. Captain Zara stood at attention behind her, clearly unhappy about the queen visiting a prisoner personally. "Leave us," Neela commanded. And though Zara hesitated momentarily, she obeyed, closing the door behind her, but undoubtedly remaining just outside. Neela regarded Brody silently for a moment. In the confined space of the cell, away from the pageantry of the arena, she seemed different, still regal and dangerous, but somehow more real. "Your technique in the arena was interesting," she finally said. "Analyzing my combat stance rather than begging for your life. A strategy I have not encountered before." Brody sat up straighter on the stone bench that served as the cell's only furniture. "I thought it might be refreshing for you. After 100 identical encounters, variety must be welcome." "You mock me, human." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees with her words. "Not at all," Brody replied. "I offer you respect by treating you as what you are, a warrior and ruler of unparalleled skill who has likely grown weary of predictable opponents. Would you prefer I tremble and plead like the 99 before me?" A hint of a smile, so brief he might have imagined it, crossed Neela's face. "You speak as though you know me, yet we have only just met under the most inauspicious of circumstances. I'm a diplomat. Reading people, even non-human people, is what I do." Brody leaned forward slightly. "For instance, I can tell that you didn't come here merely to continue our conversation from the arena. You're troubled by something. Perhaps the evidence of my alleged conspiracy doesn't align with your assessment of me." Neela's expression hardened. "You are perceptive, but overconfident. The evidence against you is substantial. Communications intercepted between you and your Earth superiors, discussing strategies to— What was the phrase? Bring Cathera into the fold through leverage of its internal divisions. Brody nodded thoughtfully. I see. And these communications, were they provided to you by General Vex, by any chance? The subtle shift in Neela's posture told him he'd hit the mark. General Vex serves the throne loyally, she stated, though there was a new edge to her voice. I'm sure he does, Brody agreed. Just as I'm sure that if you examine those communications more carefully, you'll find inconsistencies, diplomatic phraseology that doesn't match Earth standard protocols, references to leverage that sound more military than diplomatic. These aren't mistakes I would make. You suggest the evidence is fabricated? Neela's voice was dangerous now. That a high-ranking member of my court would commit treason by falsely accusing an ambassador? I suggest, Brody said carefully, that in any court, there are those who see diplomatic relations as a threat to traditional power structures. Earth offers technology, trade, and alliance, all without requiring Cathera to submit to our authority. Some might view this as undermining the very foundation of a society built on strength and conquest. The bioluminescent lights in the cell pulsed slowly, casting shifting shadows across Neela's face as she considered his words. You weave an interesting narrative, human. But words are easy. Proof is what matters in my court. Then allow me to help you find it, Brody proposed. Keep me alive long enough to investigate these allegations. If I'm guilty, you lose nothing. Your blade will still be waiting. But if I'm innocent, you prevent a grave injustice and potentially uncover a real conspiracy within your ranks. Queen Neela studied him with those alien eyes, searching for deception. You play a dangerous game, human. So do you, Your Majesty. Every day on the throne is a game with the highest stakes. I'm simply offering you an additional move you hadn't considered. After a long moment, Neela inclined her head slightly. 3 days. You have 3 days to provide evidence supporting your claims. During this time, you will remain in custody but will be granted limited access to communicate under supervision. If you attempt to escape or contact Earth directly, your execution will be immediate. Understood, Brody agreed. And I'll need access to the original communications that were used against me. Captain Zara will provide them, Neela said, moving toward the door. She paused before exiting. 100 have faced me in combat, diplomat. 100 have fallen. Remember that before you consider any creative interpretations of our agreement. With that, she was gone, leaving Brody alone in the pulsing light of his cell. Once she had left, he allowed himself a small smile. The first move had been made. The Queen's interest captured. Now the real game could begin. The next morning, Brody was escorted from his cell by Captain Zara herself, whose coppery features remained locked in permanent disapproval. She led him through a labyrinth of stone corridors, each illuminated by the same bioluminescent organisms that seemed to be integrated into all Catherine architecture. The Queen takes a significant risk in granting you this freedom, Zara said as they walked. I advised against it. I'm sure you did, Brody replied pleasantly. It's your job to protect her from threats. But I'm not a threat, Captain. I'm a resource. Zara shot him a sidelong glance. 112 species have established diplomatic relations with Cathera. None have sent representatives as unorthodox as you. Perhaps that's why they've all remained merely trading partners, rather than true allies, Brody suggested. Real alliance requires understanding beyond the surface level. They arrived at a chamber that appeared to be a communication center, with various screens and holographic displays showing data Brody couldn't decipher. A Catherine officer stood at attention, handing Zara a small device that resembled a crystal tablet. These are the intercepted communications, Zara explained, passing the tablet to Brody. You will review them here, under my supervision. Any attempt to send messages will result in immediate termination of this experiment. Brody accepted the tablet, quickly familiarizing himself with its interface. The alien technology responded to his touch differently than Earth devices, requiring more pressure and deliberate movements. The communications were displayed in both Catherine script and translated Earth Standard, presumably for the benefit of Queen Neela and her court when reviewing the evidence. As he read through the messages, Brody's suspicions were confirmed. The communications contained subtle errors that no Earth diplomat would make, references to Earth's unified command, rather than the correct diplomatic corps. Military phraseology mixed inappropriately with diplomatic language, and timestamps that didn't align with Earth's communication protocols. "These are well-crafted forgeries," he commented, looking up at Zara. "But they contain inconsistencies that prove they didn't originate from me or any Earth diplomatic channel." Zara's expression remained unchanged. Conveniently, only another human would recognize such subtleties. "Not necessarily," Brody countered. "I need to see records of legitimate communications between Earth and Cathera from before my arrival. There should be initial contact protocols, arrangement of diplomatic missions, standard greetings, all following a consistent format that these forgeries deviate from." After a moment's hesitation, Zara instructed the officer to retrieve the requested records. While they waited, Brody decided to probe further. "How long has General Vex served in the Queen's court?" he asked casually. "General Vex is a decorated warrior who has served the throne for 20 cycles," Zara replied stiffly. "His loyalty is beyond question." "I'm sure it is," Brody nodded. "And his relationship with neighboring systems. I understand he led the campaign against the Meridian Collective." Zara's eyes narrowed. "You are well informed for a diplomat who arrived only 3 weeks ago. Research is fundamental to diplomacy, Captain. Knowing the key players, their histories, their accomplishments, it's essential preparation." Before Zara could respond, the officer returned with another crystal tablet. Brody accepted it and immediately began comparing the legitimate communications with the forgeries. The differences were subtle, but undeniable. Formatting, terminology, encryption signatures. He pointed these out to Zara, whose expression gradually shifted from skepticism to concern. "These discrepancies are troubling," she admitted reluctantly. "But they don't prove General Vex's involvement." "No, they don't," Brody agreed. "But they do prove that someone wanted me eliminated quickly, before I could establish deeper diplomatic ties. The question is why?" Zara crossed her arms. "What do you propose?" "I need to speak with Queen Neela again," Brody said. "And then, with her permission, I'd like to send a very specific message to Earth, one that might flush out our conspirator." Captain Zara led Brody through the palace's inner sanctum, an area few outsiders had ever seen. The walls here were not merely stone, but contained veins of a crystalline material that seemed to respond to their presence, illuminating their path as they walked. Guards stationed at various intersections watched with barely concealed curiosity as the human diplomat passed. Queen Neela awaited them in what appeared to be a private study, a circular room with a dome ceiling that displayed a real-time map of the Catherine star system. 3 of the 5 suns were visible, their positions marked with pulsing light. Ancient texts and modern technological devices coexisted in the space, speaking to Cathera's blend of tradition and innovation. The Queen dismissed Zara with a gesture, though the captain clearly left reluctantly, her hand never straying far from her weapon. When they were alone, Neela turned to Brody with an expectant expression. "You've examined the evidence," she stated. "What have you discovered?" Brody presented his findings methodically, highlighting the inconsistencies between the forged communications and legitimate Earth diplomatic protocol. As he spoke, he noted how Neela listened attentively, her analytical mind clearly processing each point, weighing it against her own knowledge and experience. These discrepancies are concerning, she acknowledged when he had finished. But they prove only that the communications may be forgeries, not who created them or why. True, Brody agreed. Which is why I need your permission to send a message to Earth, one that will help us identify the real conspirator. Neela's eyes narrowed. Explain. I propose sending a message reporting a diplomatic crisis. A false one. The content of this message would include specific details that only someone with access to royal communications would know. We then monitor who reacts to this information and how. You suggest using misinformation as bait, Neela observed, a hint of approval in her voice. Exactly. If General Vex is behind the forgeries, he'll likely take action based on this new information. Action that would reveal his true intentions. The Queen was silent for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the surface of a nearby console. This strategy has merit, but it carries risk. If word of a diplomatic crisis reaches the public, it could cause panic or damage relations with Earth permanently. Which is why we control the narrative carefully, Brody explained. The crisis would be serious enough to warrant attention but contained enough to prevent widespread alarm. Something like a dispute over mining rights in the outer asteroid belt, significant to those directly involved, but not threatening to the general population. Neela considered this, then nodded slowly. Very well. You may compose this message, but Captain Zara and I will review it before transmission. Of course, Brody agreed readily. And there's one more thing that might help our investigation. The original accusations against me came shortly after I requested information about Cathera's defensive systems. Standard protocol for establishing potential military cooperation. If we could review who accessed that request and what happened to it afterward. You think the timing is not coincidental, Neela stated. I think someone wanted to prevent Earth from gaining too much insight into Catherine military capabilities, Brody confirmed. The question is whether that someone was acting to protect Cathera or to serve another agenda entirely. Queen Neela moved to a console and entered a series of commands. A holographic display appeared, showing a complex web of information flow through the Catherine government systems. This is the access log for all diplomatic communications from Earth. Your request was received here. She pointed to one node, and then routed through military assessment, as is standard procedure. Brody studied the display carefully. There, that divergence. Your request was duplicated, with one copy going to the standard assessment team, and another going somewhere off the main network. Neela's eyes widened slightly, her posture tensing. That route leads to a secure communication hub used only for contact with our intelligence operatives in other systems. Including the Meridian Collective? Brody asked quietly. The Queen's expression hardened. General Vex oversees our operations in Meridian space. If he diverted this information, then he might be using my presence to manipulate Catherine policy toward Earth. Brody finished. The question is why. The fabricated diplomatic crisis was set in motion the following day. Brody composed a message to Earth, reporting a dispute over mining rights in Cathera's outer asteroid belt, claiming that local military commanders had threatened to impound Earth survey vessels. The message included specific references to patrol routes and resource deposits that only someone with access to secure information would recognize. Queen Neela approved the message after making subtle modifications to ensure it wouldn't cause actual diplomatic harm if intercepted by legitimate channels. The trap was set. Now they needed only to wait and watch for reactions. They didn't have to wait long. Within hours of the message being sent, Palace security systems detected unusual activity in the communication networks. Someone was accessing military deployment records, specifically those related to the asteroid belt mentioned in Brody's message. The access protocols matched General Vex's authorization, Captain Zara reported, her earlier skepticism now replaced with grim determination. He's routing commands to the 6th Fleet, redirecting 3 patrol vessels toward the mining sector. Queen Neela's expression was thunderous. He moves military assets without my approval, based on information from a diplomatic channel he should have no knowledge of. The evidence mounts, Captain. But it's still not definitive, Brody cautioned. We need to catch him in a more overtly treasonous act, something that cannot be explained away as overzealous protection of Catherine interests. The Queen studied the tactical display showing the movement of ships throughout her territory. What do you propose? Escalation, Brody said simply. We need to force his hand, make him believe that his position is threatened, unless he takes immediate action. A plan was formed. Queen Neela would summon her full council, including General Vex, announcing her intention to formalize an alliance with Earth, one that would include shared military technology and joint defense protocols. The meeting would be scheduled for the following day, giving Vex little time to react but enough to make a critical mistake if he was indeed working against Catherine interests. As preparations were made, Brody found himself spending more time in Queen Neela's company, away from the public eye, in the private chambers of the palace. She showed a different side, still regal and commanding, but also thoughtful and surprisingly well-versed in Earth culture and history. Your people have a fascinating capacity for adapting to defeat, she observed, as they reviewed historical Earth conflicts displayed on a holographic projection. Where Catherans would consider surrender shameful, humans often retreat, regroup, and return stronger. We call it resilience, Brody explained. Survival sometimes means recognizing when direct confrontation isn't the best strategy. Neela considered this. Yet you did not retreat in the arena. You challenged me directly, despite being at a clear disadvantage. Brody smiled slightly. Sometimes direct confrontation is exactly the right strategy, especially when your opponent respects courage above all else. Their eyes met across the holographic display, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite their vastly different origins. The moment was broken by Captain Zara's arrival, announcing that preparations for the council meeting were complete. Rest, diplomat, Queen Neela instructed as she rose to leave. Tomorrow will test us all. The Grand Council Chamber of Cathera was a marvel of ancient engineering and modern technology. Carved from a single massive piece of living stone over 15,000 years ago, its acoustics were perfectly designed so that a speaker at the center could be heard clearly at every point in the room without amplification. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet overhead, depicting the entire Catherine star system in precisely placed, bioluminescent organisms that shifted in real time to match the actual positions of celestial bodies. 12 seats surrounded the central speaking platform, each designated for a high-ranking member of Queen Neela's government. General Vex's position was directly across from the Queen's own seat, symbolizing his role as both her military commander and potential challenger, a traditional arrangement dating back to Cathera's earliest ruling structures. Brody had been positioned in an observer's alcove, visible to the council, but not permitted to speak unless directly addressed. Captain Zara stood at attention behind the Queen's seat, her posture rigid, but her eyes constantly scanning for any sign of threat. As the council members filed in, Brody studied General Vex carefully. Tall, even by Catherine standards, with skin the deep blue-green of their species' military caste. Vex moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. The scarring on his face and neck spoke of numerous battles survived, while the insignia on his formal armor indicated victories in at least 3 major campaigns. He was, by any measure, an imposing figure, one whose loyalty would rarely be questioned, which made him the perfect traitor. Queen Neela entered last, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the bioluminescent light. The council members rose in unison, performing the traditional salute, right fist pressed to left shoulder. Neela acknowledged them with a nod before taking her seat. "Honored counselors," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. "I have summoned you to witness a historic decision. After careful consideration and diplomatic negotiations, I intend to formalize a full alliance with Earth, including shared military technology and joint defense protocols." The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the council. Several members exchanged glances, while others stared at their queen in obvious shock. General Vex's reaction, however, was more controlled, a slight tightening around the eyes, a barely perceptible tension in his posture. "My queen," he spoke, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "While I respect your wisdom in all matters, I must express concern about the speed of this decision. Earth is still largely unknown to us. Their intentions not fully understood. Their intentions have been clearly communicated through their diplomatic mission," Neela countered smoothly. "Ambassador Keller has provided extensive documentation of Earth's peaceful expansion policies and their technological offerings." Vex's eyes flicked briefly to Brody before returning to the Queen. "The same ambassador who was accused of conspiracy against your reign? Forgive me, Your Majesty, but this sudden reversal seems precipitous." "The accusations have been investigated and found to be based on falsified evidence," Neela stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Which raises the question of who would benefit from disrupting relations between Cathera and Earth." The council chamber grew very still, the bioluminescent ceiling pulsing with a slow, tense rhythm that seemed to match the collective heartbeat of those present. "An excellent question, Your Majesty," Vex agreed, his composure intact. "One that deserves thorough investigation. However, even if the ambassador is innocent of conspiracy, rushing into a military alliance could destabilize our existing relationships with neighboring systems." "Such as the Meridian Collective?" Neela asked pointedly. Something flickered in Vex's eyes. Caution, perhaps, or calculation. "The Meridians are a conquered people who serve our interests. Their opinion on our alliances is irrelevant." "And yet," the Queen continued, "I find it curious that communications regarding Earth's diplomatic mission were diverted to our intelligence hub overseeing Meridian space, a hub under your direct command. General." Now, murmurs spread among the council members, their eyes darting between Queen and General as the tension in the room escalated. Vex straightened, his expression hardening. "Your Majesty, if you are implying something, I suggest you speak plainly. My loyalty to Cathera is absolute and unquestionable." "Is it?" Neela rose from her seat, her silver armor catching the light. "Then perhaps you can explain why patrol vessels from the Sixth Fleet have been redirected to the mining sector of the outer asteroid belt, the exact location mentioned in a secured diplomatic communication that you should have had no access to." The general's composure slipped, just slightly, enough for those watching closely to notice. "Fleet movements fall under my authority as military commander. I need not explain every tactical decision." "You do when those decisions contradict direct orders," Captain Zara interjected, stepping forward with a crystal tablet. "This contains the communication logs showing that you accessed information about a diplomatic crisis that was fabricated as a test, a crisis known only to Her Majesty, Ambassador Keller, and myself." The council chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Several members rose to their feet, demands for explanation overlapping into a cacophony that the chamber's perfect acoustics amplified, rather than diminished. Through it all, General Vex remained still, his eyes locked with Queen Neela's in a silent battle of wills. When he finally spoke, his voice cut through the noise with dangerous calm. "You test my loyalty based on the word of an alien diplomat? One who has spent mere weeks on our world yet somehow earns your trust more than a general who has bled for Cathera for 20 cycles." "I test everyone's loyalty, General," Neela replied evenly. "It is how I have survived 100 challenges in the arena. The question now is whether you wish to make it 101. The implication was clear. Vex was being offered the traditional right to challenge the monarch in combat. If he was innocent, he would defend his honor. If guilty, such a challenge would be suicide against the undefeated queen. For a moment, it seemed as though Vex might actually accept the challenge. His hand moved subtly toward his ceremonial weapon. Then, with startling speed, he instead reached into his armor and withdrew a small device that Brody instantly recognized as a remote detonator. "I had hoped to avoid this public spectacle," Vex announced, his voice now cold and clinical. The alliance with Earth was never acceptable, not while they refused to share their most advanced weapons technology. The Meridians offered better terms, including phase-shift bombs capable of penetrating even your palace defenses. He held up the detonator, such as the one currently installed in your private chambers, set to detonate at my signal. Chaos erupted as guards moved to protect the queen and apprehend Vex. But the general had planned for this moment. Hidden supporters among the palace staff suddenly revealed themselves, weapons drawn, creating a standoff that froze everyone in place. "Lower your weapons," Vex commanded the loyal guards, "or I trigger the device immediately." Queen Neela remained eerily calm, her posture unchanged despite the threat to her life. "You betray not just me, but all of Cathera. For what? Weapons that would make us dependent on Meridian technology? For a future where Cathera leads through superior firepower, not ancient traditions of combat that have no place in modern warfare," Vex spat. "Your obsession with personal battle prowess blinds you to the realities of interstellar politics. Earth offers us outdated technology while keeping their true advancements secret. The Meridians offer everything." "At what cost?" Neela challenged. Vex smiled thinly. "Merely a change in leadership. One the people will accept when they learn their beloved queen died in an assassination attempt by Earth, conveniently explaining why relations with them must be severed permanently." From his position in the observer's alcove, Brody could see the entire chamber, the loyal guards poised to act but restrained by the threat of the detonator. The council members, frozen in shock. Captain Zara's hand hovering near her weapon as she calculated odds that didn't favor the queen's survival. It was time for the final gambit. "General," Brody called out, stepping forward despite protocol forbidding him from speaking. "Before you trigger that device, you should know that your Meridian allies have already betrayed you." Vex's eyes flicked to him dismissively. "Silence, human. Your interference ends now. The message about the mining dispute wasn't the only falsified communication we sent," Brody continued, ignoring the warning. "We also sent one to your Meridian contacts, informing them that you had been discovered and offering to negotiate directly with them instead. They accepted immediately." Doubt flickered across Vex's face. "You're lying." "Am I?" Brody nodded toward Captain Zara, who produced another crystal tablet. "This contains their response, agreeing to abandon you in exchange for more favorable terms with Queen Neela. Apparently, your value to them was purely as a means to an end, a disposable asset." Vex's composure cracked further. "Show me," he demanded. "Lower your weapon first," Queen Neela commanded. "Or receive no proof and die, wondering if you sacrificed everything for allies who discarded you at the first opportunity." For a tense moment, the general's finger hovered over the detonator. Then, slowly, he lowered his hand. "Show me the message." Captain Zara stepped forward cautiously. The tablet extended. As Vex reached for it, she moved with lightning speed, striking his arm and sending the detonator flying across the chamber. In the same motion, she swept his feet from under him, pinning him to the ground with her weapon at his throat. The hidden supporters, seeing their leader neutralized, quickly surrendered as loyal guards surrounded them. The crisis was contained almost as quickly as it had erupted. Queen Neela approached the fallen general, her expression impassive. "General Vex, you are hereby stripped of all rank and titles. You will face trial for high treason against the crown of Cathera, with execution to follow." As guards secured Vex in restraints, Brody approached the Queen. "Your Majesty, if I may." There was no second message to the Meridians. It was a bluff. A hint of a smile touched Neela's lips. "I know. A calculated risk that paid off." She turned to address the council, which had fallen into shocked silence. "Honored counselors, we have witnessed treachery of the highest order today. Let it serve as a reminder that loyalty to Cathera must come before personal ambition or outside influence." The council members nodded in solemn agreement, many still processing the dramatic events they had just witnessed. As the guards led Vex away, Queen Neela turned back to Brody. "Ambassador, it seems I owe you more than just your life. You have helped preserve the integrity of my rule and potentially prevented Cathera from falling under Meridian influence." "I was merely fulfilling my diplomatic mission, Your Majesty," Brody replied. "Though I admit, this goes somewhat beyond the standard protocol for establishing relations." A genuine smile broke through Neela's regal mask. "Indeed. Perhaps we should discuss a more appropriate diplomatic arrangement once the immediate crisis has been fully resolved." As the council chamber slowly emptied, Brody found himself wondering how much of what had just transpired had been part of his original mission parameters, and how much had become something else entirely. Something he hadn't anticipated when he first set foot on Cathera. The aftermath of General Vex's attempted coup brought sweeping changes to the Catheran court. Investigations revealed a network of conspirators throughout the military and diplomatic corps, all carefully positioned by Vex over years of service. Queen Neela responded with characteristic efficiency, removing the disloyal elements while maintaining the stability of her government. Throughout this period of transition, Brody remained by her side as both diplomatic advisor and trusted confidant. Their working relationship deepened as they navigated the complex process of restructuring Cathera's relationship with both Earth and the Meridian Collective. The original bomb in the Queen's chambers had been discovered and neutralized, but the threat it represented, Meridian technology far beyond Cathera's defensive capabilities, remained a pressing concern. 3 weeks after Vex's arrest, Queen Neela summoned Brody to her private garden, a rare space of natural beauty in the otherwise stone-dominated architecture of the palace. Bioluminescent flora created a twilight atmosphere, despite the 3 suns blazing overhead. Their light filtered through crystal panels, specifically designed to protect the delicate ecosystem within. Neela dismissed her attendants, including the ever-present Captain Zara, who withdrew reluctantly to the garden's perimeter. When they were alone, the Queen gestured for Brody to join her on a bench, carved from the same living stone as the rest of the palace. "The treaty with Earth is nearly finalized," she began, her tone more casual than he had ever heard from her in public. "Your diplomatic corps has been surprisingly flexible in their terms. They recognize the value of a strong alliance with Cathera," Brody replied, "especially given the Meridian situation." Neela nodded thoughtfully. "And yet, I find myself wondering about certain aspects of this arrangement. For instance, why Earth would send such an exceptional diplomat for what initially appeared to be a routine mission." Brody felt a subtle shift in the conversation, a dangerous undercurrent beneath the seemingly innocent observation. "I'm hardly exceptional, just fortunate in how events unfolded. Are you?" Neela's alien eyes studied him with unsettling intensity. "A standard diplomat who happens to possess intimate knowledge of combat techniques, counterintelligence strategies, and psychological manipulation, who manages to turn a scheduled execution into an opportunity to expose a high-level conspiracy." "When you put it that way, I do sound rather impressive," Brody admitted with a slight smile, attempting to deflect with humor. The Queen was not deterred. "I had my intelligence officers analyze your methods, Ambassador, They found striking similarities to an Earth program called Project Siren, a specialized division of your diplomatic corps trained specifically for high-risk missions involving regime influence. Brody kept his expression neutral, though internally he cursed the thoroughness of Catherine intelligence. Every government has specialized diplomatic divisions. Your Majesty, it doesn't change the legitimacy of our proposed alliance. Perhaps not, Neela agreed. But it does raise questions about your true mission here. Was exposing General Vex merely a fortunate accident, or the first stage in a more complex strategy to reshape Catheran governance to better align with Earth's interests? The directness of the question demanded equal honesty. Brody chose his next words carefully, aware that their entire relationship, and potentially the alliance itself, hung in the balance. My initial mission parameters included identifying potential leverage points within your government, he admitted finally. Earth intelligence had detected Meridian influence, but couldn't pinpoint its source. I was sent to investigate and, if possible, counter that influence while establishing more favorable conditions for Earth-Catherine relations. More favorable conditions, Neela repeated, her voice cool. A diplomatic euphemism for ensuring Cathera's policies align with Earth's strategic objectives. Initially, yes, Brody acknowledged. That was the assignment I accepted. Something shifted in Neela's expression. A hardening, perhaps, or a withdrawal. And now? What is your assignment now, Ambassador? Brody met her gaze directly. That's where matters become complicated. My superiors at Project Siren expect regular progress reports and evidence that I'm successfully managing our relationship toward Earth's advantage. Commander Vale, my superior officer, has very specific expectations about how this alliance should develop. And yet you tell me this openly, Neela observed. Why? Because somewhere between facing execution in your arena and watching you confront a traitor in your council chamber, my priorities shifted, Brody admitted. I began to see Cathera, and you, as more than just strategic objectives. I've come to respect your leadership and your vision for your people. The Queen's expression remained guarded. Pretty words, diplomat. But they don't answer my question. What game are you playing now? No game, Brody said simply. Just a choice. I can continue following my original mission parameters, manipulating events to ensure Earth gains maximum advantage from this alliance. Or, I can work with you to create a genuinely balanced partnership, one that serves both our peoples equally, even if it means defying certain expectations from my superiors. And you choose the latter? Neela's skepticism was evident. Against your own career interests? Against your loyalty to Earth? My loyalty is to principles, not politics, Brody replied. Earth sent me to counter Meridian influence, not to subjugate Cathera. If we can achieve security for both our worlds through honest partnership, rather than manipulation, isn't that preferable? Neela was silent for a long moment, the bioluminescent plants around them pulsing in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. When she finally spoke, her voice had softened slightly. You've proven yourself clever, Ambassador. Perhaps clever enough to recognize that appearing to defy your superiors while actually serving their interests would be the ultimate manipulation. True, Brody acknowledged, but there's one flaw in that theory. Which is? It wouldn't explain why I'm telling you about Project Siren at all. If I were still fully committed to my original mission, this conversation would never happen. I'd maintain the facade of the ordinary diplomat, who just happened to help expose a conspiracy. Queen Neela considered this point, her fingers tracing patterns on the living stone beside her, a habit Brody had noticed she displayed when deep in thought. What do you propose, then? She asked finally. Transparency, Brody said. I'll share Project Siren's objectives and methods with you. In return, you share your actual concerns and red lines regarding Earth. Together, we craft an alliance that genuinely serves both our interests, one that I can present to my superiors as a diplomatic triumph, while ensuring it doesn't compromise Catherine's sovereignty. A dangerous proposition for you, Neela observed. If your superiors discover this arrangement, then I'll have chosen loyalty to principle over protocol, Brody finished. A choice I'm prepared to make. The Queen studied him with those alien eyes that had begun to seem less foreign to him over the weeks of their acquaintance. You are either the most honorable human I've encountered, or the most skilled deceiver. Perhaps a bit of both, Brody admitted with a small smile. Isn't that true of anyone who serves in positions of power? Even queens must sometimes deceive to protect what matters most. Something changed in Neela's expression then. A softening. A moment of genuine connection. Indeed, the burden of rule often lies in knowing which deceptions are necessary and which are merely convenient. She rose from the bench, moving to examine a particularly vibrant, bioluminescent flower. Very well, Ambassador. We will attempt this. Transparent deception together, beginning with a full briefing on Project Siren's objectives regarding Cathera. Brody joined her by the flower, noting how its light pulsed more rapidly as they approached. And in return, I would appreciate insights into Catherine intelligence on Earth activities. Fair exchange ensures mutual security. Agreed, Neela said, then added with unexpected warmth. Though I find myself hoping that not everything between us will be merely strategic calculation. The comment caught Brody off guard, its implications sending a current of something unexpected through him. Before he could formulate a response, Captain Zara approached, informing the Queen that an urgent matter required her attention. As Neela prepared to leave, she paused beside Brody. We'll continue this discussion this evening, in my private chambers. Come alone. Some negotiations are best conducted without witnesses. With that, she departed, leaving Brody among the pulsing lights of the garden, contemplating how thoroughly his carefully constructed mission had transformed into something far more complex, and potentially far more significant than he had ever anticipated. That evening, as Brody made his way to the Queen's private chambers, he found himself wrestling with conflicting loyalties. Project Siren had selected him specifically for this mission because of his exceptional record in influencing foreign leaders. His ability to build trust while subtly redirecting policy had earned him the nickname the Architect among his peers. Commander Vale, his direct superior, had made the objectives crystal clear. Secure Catherine military cooperation while maintaining Earth's technological advantages. Yet something about Queen Neela had disrupted his carefully calibrated approach. Perhaps it was her unexpected complexity, the fierce warrior queen who also possessed a keen analytical mind and surprising compassion. Or perhaps it was the realization that Cathera faced genuine threats from Meridian expansion. Threats that Earth might be unwittingly enabling through its own political machinations. The Queen's chambers were located in the highest tower of the palace, accessible only via a single corridor, guarded by her most trusted warriors. Captain Zara stood at the entrance, her expression unreadable as she gestured for Brody to enter, without the usual security protocols. The interior was not what Brody had expected. Rather than the opulent display of power, typical of Earth monarchs, Neela's private space was almost austere. Functional furnishings crafted with precision rather than ostentation. Tactical displays showing various sectors of Catherine's space, and a surprising collection of artifacts from different worlds, suggesting a curious mind with broad interests. Queen Neela herself was seated at a simple desk, reviewing documents on a crystal tablet. She had discarded her ceremonial armor for a fitted garment that resembled a military uniform, but with subtle embellishments indicating her royal status. Without looking up, she gestured for Brody to take the seat opposite her. Your Project Siren has an impressive success rate, she commented, sliding the tablet across the desk so he could see its contents. 17 regime changes in 12 years, all without direct military intervention. Earth's diplomatic corps is remarkably effective. Brody glanced at the tablet, surprised by the accuracy of the intelligence it contained. Where did you get this information? Kythera has its own version of Project Siren. Ambassador. We call it the Shadow Court. General Vex was actually its former director before his misalignment of priorities. And now? Neela's lips curved in a slight smile. Now I oversee it directly, with Captain Zara as operational commander. Trust is in short supply after recent events. Brody nodded, understanding the implication. So we're both operating under similar mandates, advancing our world's interests through non-traditional diplomatic means. The difference, Neela pointed out, is that I've shown my hand. You've yet to fully reveal yours. It was a fair challenge. Brody took a deep breath and began outlining Project Siren's true objectives regarding Kythera: the identification of key pressure points in the government, the assessment of military capabilities, the gradual introduction of Earth technology with carefully designed dependencies to ensure ongoing influence. He explained Commander Vale's directives regarding the Meridian situation and how Earth sought to position itself as the primary ally against Meridian expansion while maintaining technological superiority. Throughout his explanation, Queen Neela listened with remarkable composure, occasionally asking incisive questions that revealed her sophisticated understanding of interstellar politics. When Brody finished, she was silent for a long moment, her alien eyes studying him with an intensity that made him wonder if Kytherans possessed some form of natural lie detection. "You've been surprisingly forthcoming," she finally said, "though I suspect there are still aspects you've omitted. As I'm sure there are aspects of Kytheran policy you're not sharing," Brody countered gently. "Complete transparency is rarely possible in our positions, but I've told you enough of the truth to demonstrate good faith." Neela rose from her desk and moved to a large viewport that offered a stunning view of Kythera's capital city. Stretching out beneath the palace in concentric rings of ancient stone and modern infrastructure. The three suns were setting in sequence, casting multiple overlapping shadows across the landscape, a phenomenon unique to this world. "Do you know why I've never lost in the arena, Ambassador?" she asked, her back to him as she gazed out at her domain. "Your combat skills are legendary," Brody replied, joining her at the viewport. "But I suspect there's more to it than natural talent." "Indeed." Neela turned to face him, close enough now that he could see the subtle patterns in her skin that humans lacked, bioluminescent markings that seemed to pulse with her emotions. "I win because I understand that true victory doesn't come from defeating an opponent. It comes from transforming them into an ally." "An unusual philosophy for a warrior queen known as Silver Death," Brody observed. "The public execution of criminals serves its purpose in maintaining order," Neela acknowledged. "But the true art of rule lies in knowing when to strike and when to extend a hand." She moved closer, studying his face with curious intensity. "You've been honest with me, so I shall be honest with you. Kythera needs this alliance with Earth, but not on terms that would make us dependent or vulnerable. And Earth needs Kythera's strategic position and resource access," Brody responded, "but not at the cost of security risks or technological compromise. Then we find the balance," Neela stated simply. "A true alliance based on mutual benefit rather than dominance. Is that something you can help create, Ambassador? Or does it conflict too directly with your Project Siren directives?" The question was the crux of everything: his mission, his career, and increasingly, his personal convictions. Brody thought of Commander Vale's expectations, of the carefully crafted reports he'd been sending that emphasized progress while obscuring his growing doubts. "My directives are to secure an alliance that serves Earth's interests," he said carefully. "How that alliance is structured, there's room for interpretation." "Not enough room for genuine partnership," Neela countered. "We both know that. Project Siren doesn't seek allies. It seeks assets. The bluntness of her assessment struck uncomfortably close to truth. Brody found himself at a crossroads he hadn't anticipated when accepting this mission. A moment where professional duty and personal integrity diverged. "Then perhaps it's time for a new approach," he said finally. "One that neither Project Siren nor your Shadow Court has considered. A genuine alliance between equals, with safeguards that prevent either side from gaining undue advantage." "And you would champion such an approach? Against your superiors' expectations?" Neela's tone was skeptical, but her eyes held something else. Hope, perhaps, or at least willingness to believe. "I would," Brody confirmed, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "Because I've come to believe it's the right course for both our peoples. The Meridians are actively seeking to destabilize this entire sector. Neither Earth nor Cathera can afford the luxury of manipulating each other while that threat grows." Queen Neela studied him for a long moment, the bioluminescent patterns in her skin pulsing with increasing intensity. Then, with deliberate movements, she reached up and removed the ceremonial silver circlet that marked her royal status, a gesture of such intimacy and vulnerability that Brody momentarily froze in surprise. "Then let us negotiate as Neela and Brody," she said softly. "Not as queen and ambassador. No titles, no official positions, just two individuals seeking the best path forward for their peoples." The gesture was powerful in its symbolism, and Brody recognized both the opportunity and the risk it presented. Removing the formal barriers between them created space for genuine connection, but also for deeper manipulation. The question was, which path he would choose. In that moment, looking at Neela without her royal trappings, seeing the person beneath the queen, Brody made his decision. He reached into his diplomatic uniform and removed the small communication device that connected him to Project Siren, his lifeline to Earth and to Commander Vale, and placed it on the table between them. "No titles," he agreed. "No hidden agendas. Just honest negotiation between equals." Something shifted in Neela's expression. A softening. A vulnerability he hadn't seen before. "You continue to surprise me, human. I expected skillful deception. Not whatever this is. Truth, perhaps," Brody suggested. "Something rare enough in our positions that it's almost unrecognizable." "Truth." Neela repeated the word as if testing its weight. "A dangerous foundation for diplomacy." "But the only viable one for true alliance," Brody countered, "especially when facing common threats." They talked through the night, moving from formal negotiation points to deeper discussions of their respective worlds' histories and values. Neela spoke of Cathera's evolution from warring clans to unified planetary government, of the tradition of trial by combat that had shaped their approach to leadership and conflict resolution. Brody shared Earth's complex past of cooperation and division, the hard-learned lessons that had eventually led to global governance and interstellar expansion. As the first of Cathera's three suns began to rise, casting golden light through the viewport, they had outlined a framework for alliance that differed significantly from either Earth's or Cathera's original objectives, a balanced approach that emphasized mutual defense, carefully staged technology exchange, and cultural understanding. "Your Commander Vale will not be pleased with these terms," Neela observed as they reviewed the draft agreement. "No," Brody agreed. "He'll see it as compromise where he expected conquest, diplomatic conquest, but conquest nonetheless." "And yet you'll advocate for it." Brody nodded. "Because it's sustainable. Project Siren's approach might yield short-term advantages, but at the cost of long-term instability. This framework offers genuine partnership that strengthens both our positions against Meridian expansion." Neela moved closer, her hand resting lightly on his arm, a gesture of connection that sent an unexpected current through him. "And if they reject your recommendation, If they recall you for failing to secure their preferred terms? The question hung between them, laden with implications that went beyond diplomatic strategy. Brody found himself facing not just a professional choice, but a personal one that would define his path forward in ways he hadn't anticipated when arriving on Cathera. "Then I will have failed in my mission but succeeded in my purpose," he said finally. "And I'll find a way to continue supporting this alliance, with or without Project Siren's approval." Neela's bioluminescent markings pulsed with emotion, her alien features softening into an expression that transcended species differences. "You speak of betraying your mandate for principle. That is not a small thing." "No," Brody agreed. "But neither is what we've built here. A foundation for genuine partnership rather than strategic manipulation. That's worth protecting, even at personal cost." Something changed between them in that moment, a shift from diplomatic calculation to something more profound. Neela moved closer still, her alien eyes searching his with an intensity that made words unnecessary. When she spoke, her voice held a new quality, vulnerable yet certain. "I have faced 100 challengers in the arena," she said softly. "Defeated 100 who sought to take my throne through force. Yet you, with no weapon but truth, have managed what none of them could, to reach the person behind the queen." Brody felt the weight of her words, understood the rare gift of trust she was offering. "Truth can be the most powerful weapon," he replied, "or the strongest foundation for alliance. The choice of how to use it makes all the difference." "And your choice?" Neela asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is to build rather than conquer," Brody said simply. "To create partnership instead of dominance. For Cathera and Earth, and for us?" The moment hung between them, charged with possibility. Then Neela closed the remaining distance, her hands framing his face with unexpected gentleness. "100 have died by my blade," she murmured. "You are the first to make me question the path of strength alone." Their kiss transcended diplomatic protocol, cultural differences, even species barriers, a connection forged through mutual respect and growing affection that neither had anticipated when their paths first crossed. In that moment, the queen and the diplomat disappeared, leaving just Neela and Brody, two individuals who had found unexpected common ground in a universe of conflict. When they finally parted, Neela's bioluminescent markings pulsed with emotion, visible even to human eyes. "This complicates matters considerably," she observed, though her tone held no regret. "The best diplomatic arrangements often do," Brody replied with a smile. "The personal and the political have a way of intertwining." "Indeed." Neela's expression grew more serious. "But it also raises the stakes. If your superiors reject this alliance framework, if they insist on terms that would undermine Cathera's sovereignty, then I'll have a difficult choice to make," Brody acknowledged. "Between duty to Earth and commitment to what we've built here." Neela studied him with those alien eyes that had become increasingly familiar. "And which would you choose, if forced to decide?" It was the question he had been avoiding, the potential conflict he had hoped to reconcile through careful diplomacy. But in the growing light of Cathera's sunrise, with the truth of their connection acknowledged, evasion was no longer an option. "I would choose the path that preserves what matters most," Brody said finally. "The alliance we've designed serves both our worlds better than Project Siren's original objectives ever could. If my superiors can't see that, then my loyalty belongs to the principle rather than the protocol." "A dangerous position for a diplomat," Neela observed. "No more dangerous than a queen who chooses compassion over tradition," Brody countered gently. "We both find ourselves contemplating new paths forward." The next days were filled with intensive work, finalizing the alliance framework, while managing the aftermath of General Vex's Failed coup. Queen Neela reasserted control over her government with characteristic efficiency, appointing loyal officers to key positions, while implementing reforms to prevent future infiltration. Throughout this process, Brody served as both advisor and confidant, their professional collaboration deepening alongside their personal connection. When the time came to transmit the proposed alliance terms to Earth, Brody faced his moment of truth. The framework they had created diverged significantly from Project Siren's objectives, emphasizing mutual security, balanced technology exchange, and cultural cooperation rather than Earth's strategic dominance. Sending it would almost certainly trigger Commander Vale's disapproval and potentially end Brody's diplomatic career. In the privacy of the communication center, with the message prepared for transmission, Brody hesitated. Queen Neela stood beside him, her expression sympathetic but resolute. "You can still modify the terms," she said quietly. "Include provisions that would satisfy your superiors, while we maintain our private understanding." Deception upon deception, Brody mused. The traditional diplomatic approach. One that might preserve your position and influence, Neela pointed out. Sometimes the longer path is necessary to reach the desired destination. Brody considered the option. It would be the safer choice. Appease Commander Vale with apparent compliance, while working gradually toward the true partnership he and Neela envisioned. Yet, something in him rebelled against returning to the web of manipulation and calculated half-truths that had defined his career with Project Siren. "No," he decided finally. "We've built this alliance on honest negotiation. I won't undermine that foundation now." He activated the transmission, sending the unmodified framework to Earth. "For better or worse, we've chosen our path." Queen Neela's bioluminescent markings pulsed with what he had come to recognize as approval. "A bold choice, diplomat. One I should have made long ago," Brody replied. Project Siren's approach may have seemed effective, but it created alliances built on deception and leverage, partnerships that could never withstand real crisis. The response from Earth came more quickly than either had anticipated. Commander Vale's holographic projection appeared in the communication center less than 6 hours after their transmission. His expression grim. "Ambassador Keller," Vale's voice was cold with controlled fury. "I've reviewed your proposed framework. It represents a complete abandonment of Project Siren's core objectives regarding Cathera. It represents an evolution in our approach," Brody countered calmly. "One that better serves Earth's long-term interests in this sector, particularly given the Meridian threat." "That assessment is not yours to make," Vale snapped. "Your mission parameters were clear. Instead of securing advantageous terms, you've proposed an equal partnership that gives away critical leverage points." "I've proposed an alliance that will actually endure," Brody insisted. "One based on mutual benefit rather than manipulation." The Meridians nearly succeeded in turning General Vex against Queen Neela, precisely because they exploited fears about Earth's intentions. If we continue that approach, we'll drive Cathera into seeking other allies. Vale's expression hardened further. "You've exceeded your authority, Ambassador. You are hereby recalled to Earth for immediate reassignment. A replacement will arrive within the week to renegotiate terms with the Catharan government." Queen Neela stepped into view of the holographic projection. "Commander Vale, I must inform you that Cathera will not negotiate with a replacement diplomat. The terms Ambassador Keller and I have established are final. Any attempt to reopen discussions will be considered a rejection of alliance." Vale's surprise at the Queen's intervention was evident. "Your Majesty, this is an internal Earth matter. Ambassador Keller's recall is unacceptable," Neela interrupted firmly. "Ambassador Keller has been formally recognized as Earth's legitimate representative to Cathera. Any attempt to replace him will be viewed as a hostile diplomatic action." The commander's expression shifted from surprise to calculation. "I see. And may I ask what has prompted such loyalty to our ambassador?" Results, Commander, Neela replied smoothly. Ambassador Keller has accomplished more in weeks than your previous representatives achieved in years. He has helped expose a Meridian plot that threatened both our worlds, established a framework for genuine alliance, and earned the trust of my government. These are not achievements to be discarded lightly. Vale's eyes narrowed as he studied both of them, clearly reassessing the situation. Ambassador Keller, I'd like a private word with you. Neela inclined her head slightly to Brody, indicating her willingness to withdraw. Once she had left the communication center, Vale's demeanor changed instantly. "What the hell have you done, Brody?" he demanded, dropping the formal address. "You were sent to manipulate the Queen, not become her advocate. I was sent to secure an alliance that serves Earth's interests." Brody responded evenly. "That's exactly what I've done. This framework provides everything we actually need: strategic positioning against Meridian expansion, access to Catherine resources, military cooperation. What it doesn't include is the hidden leverage points and technological dependencies that would ultimately undermine the alliance." "That's not your call to make," Vale insisted. "Project Siren has objectives beyond your security clearance. There are strategic considerations." "I know about the weapons research," Brody interrupted quietly. "The phase shift technology that Earth is developing in secret, similar to what the Meridians offered Vex. I know the real reason Project Siren wanted control over Catherine policy was to ensure they wouldn't align with anyone who might share competing technology." Vale's expression froze. "That information is classified at the highest level. How did you—" "It doesn't matter," Brody cut him off. "What matters is that I understand the bigger picture now, and I still believe this alliance framework better serves Earth's true interests. Cathera, as a genuine partner, strengthens our position against Meridian expansion. Cathera, as a manipulated asset, would eventually discover the deception and become a potential enemy." For a long moment, Vale was silent, his holographic image flickering slightly as he processed this unexpected development. "You've become personally involved with the Queen," he stated finally. "That's the only explanation for this level of insubordination." Brody neither confirmed nor denied the accusation. "My assessment of the situation is based on strategic reality. The Meridians are actively working to destabilize this sector. We need allies, not subjects." "And if I order you to return to Earth immediately?" "Then you lose Cathera as an ally," Brody replied simply. "Queen Neela was quite serious. She won't negotiate with anyone else." Vale's expression hardened. "You've put me in an impossible position, Brody. The Project Siren Oversight Committee will want your head for this deviation. Then give them the one thing they value more than protocol: results." Brody suggested, "This alliance may not follow our original approach, but it achieves our core objectives. Frame it as an adaptive strategy, rather than insubordination." Another long pause as Vale considered his options. "I'll need to consult with the committee," he said finally. "In the meantime, you are to make no further commitments or modifications to the framework. Are we clear?" "Perfectly," Brody agreed. As Vale's holographic image disappeared, Queen Neela re-entered the communication center. "That went about as expected," she observed. "They won't recall me. At least, not immediately," Brody informed her. "They need this alliance too badly to risk your refusal to negotiate with a replacement. But they'll look for ways to reassert control over the process." "And when they do?" Neela asked, moving closer. Brody took her hand, the gesture now familiar and comforting despite their physiological differences. "Then we demonstrate why genuine partnership is stronger than control. The Meridians are still out there, still looking for opportunities to exploit division between our worlds. That shared threat is our strongest argument for maintaining this alliance as we've designed it." "An alliance of equals," Neela mused. "Something neither of our governments fully anticipated." The best diplomatic outcomes rarely follow the expected path, Brody replied with a smile. They emerge from genuine engagement, rather than rigid adherence to predetermined objectives. Queen Neela's bioluminescent markings pulsed with what he now recognized as affection. You would have made a formidable opponent in the arena. Diplomat. I prefer our current arrangement, Brody said, drawing her closer. Building something together rather than facing each other in combat. As do I, Neela agreed softly. Though perhaps there's room for both in our future, the warrior and the diplomat, finding balance together. As they stood together in the communication center, the distant suns of Kathira casting multiple shadows across the floor. Brody reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought him here. From Project Siren operative to genuine ambassador. From calculated manipulation to authentic connection. Whatever challenges Earth's response might bring, whatever complications their personal relationship might face in the political arena, he had found something on Kathira that transcended his mission parameters. A partnership worth protecting, both between their worlds and between themselves. The Silver Death had indeed met her match, not in combat, but in the more complex battlefield of diplomacy and connection. And in that meeting, both had found something neither had expected. A path forward that offered strength, not through dominance but through alliance. Not through fear, but through respect. And, perhaps most surprisingly, through love that transcended the boundaries of worlds.